The Chargers punched their ticket to the postseason for the first time since 2018 behind a pair of touchdowns from Austin Ekeler and a stellar defensive performance. How dangerous can this team be in the playoffs?
I think very, and a lot of the reason is because of that quarterback. You know, all you want as an NFL fan, or at least among the things you want, is to feel like your franchise is moving in the right direction because you have the right coach and the right quarterback, and the Chargers have that with Brandon Staley and Justin Herbert. And so now they're in the playoffs, like you said, for the first time since 2018. And on the other side of it is that Colts team that is just an absolute mess. You know, when people think you don't deserve a job you have, and maybe we've all been there.
Yes.
What you want to do is prove them wrong, and Jeff Saturday obviously has not been able to prove anybody wrong. Now 1-5 as the interim coach in Indianapolis. The Colts have been outscored 90-9 in fourth quarters. It is 62-0 in the past 3 games in the fourth quarters. He was a better player than a coach, better studio analyst than a coach. And if the Colts franchise didn't realize that before, they probably do now.
Pretty big news this morning from the NFL, Gary. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, J.J. Watt tweeted that this will be his last season in the NFL. A surefire Hall of Famer. What was your reaction to the news?
Somewhat surprised, if only because it sort of came out of nowhere. But this is a guy who will go down as one of the greatest defensive players in the history of the NFL. You know, he's one of just 3 guys to win Defensive Player of the Year 3 times. The other 2 are Lawrence Taylor and Aaron Donald. He has 28 games with at least 2 sacks, which is 5 more than anybody else in the league since 2011. Undeniably dominant when on the field. But staying healthy was a problem in parts of his career. He averaged only 9 games played in each of the past 6 seasons. So if this makes sense, this is a guy who had an incredible career, likely first ballot Hall of Famer, but it felt like there could be so much more there if he'd have just stayed healthy. Either way, it's easy to understand the perspective. He's 33 years old. He's made a lot of money. He's got a beautiful wife and a beautiful baby. And he seems content with walking away right now. Seems happy to be doing it as opposed to conflicted. And so you wish him all the best. And also make note of the charitable work he's done throughout his career. That's a part of his legacy as well.
No doubt. And coming off a phenomenal individual performance on Christmas night. On Monday, the Broncos fired head coach Nathaniel Hackett after he guided Denver to a disappointing 4-11 record this season. Hackett is just the 5th head coach since 1970 to be fired before finishing his first season, Gary.
It seemed like just a matter of time with him for weeks now, and, you know, it got off to a really bad start. I think most people remember week 1. He chooses in the final seconds to attempt a 64-yard field goal instead of letting Russell Wilson try to convert on 4th down. Now, maybe given what we know about Russell Wilson now, more understandable. Yes. Maybe Nathaniel Hackett knew something about Russell Wilson before the rest of us figured it out. But ever since that night, he got labeled a certain way. And once you get labeled on such a big stage, it's hard to break through that. Obviously, it just got progressively worse. This last loss that he coached in Denver was embarrassing and lopsided. And I think the lesson here is that, you know, there's a long list of great assistant coaches or coordinators, and I'm talking about in all sports, who just maybe aren't built to be head coaches. And perhaps that's the case with Nathaniel Hackett, although I do think it's worth noting the Russell Wilson thing. You know, he got locked into this quarterback who isn't performing at the level anywhere close he used to perform, and that's among the reasons it might be difficult for Denver to hire his replacement, because you are taking a job. If you're the next Broncos coach, Russell Wilson is your quarterback, and I don't know if that's a good job right now.
Yeah, Russell's not going anywhere for quite a while, and so somebody had to go as the head coach in this instance. Well, this is a pretty significant development for a Dolphins team that has lost 4 straight and is trying to hang on to the final playoff spot in the AFC right now, Gary.
More important than that, I think, is the health of TAGOVAILOA. This is scary. You know, technically this is his 2nd time being placed in concussion protocol this season, but we all saw the first one. It just wasn't officially diagnosed. And so that's, for all intents and purposes, 3 concussions, you know, since September. We don't know the long-term effect of that, but I think you can reasonably assume it's not a good thing as opposed to a bad thing. And I'm not blaming anybody because I wouldn't even know who to blame, but I saw Mike McDaniel there say we're not even sure where it happened. I think I'm sure where it happened.
Yeah.
I think I've seen the replay of where it happened. Again, not blaming anybody, but there is a pattern here with this Miami franchise of them not being able, seemingly, to recognize this type of thing in real time. They put Tua back out there after he was concussed, it appears, and he was not the same player. And that is, again, something that should not be happening in this league in the year 2022.
All right, well put. Let's switch now gears and head to the NBA, where the Brooklyn Nets are rolling. A tough road win over the Cavs last night. Brooklyn has now won 9 straight. What's working for the Nets right now, GP?
Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. You know, I always assumed, and history tells us this, that if you've got 2 of the best players in the world, you should be a good basketball team. And in addition to a lot of other things, the Brooklyn Nets at least have 2 of the most talented players in the world. And KD, you know, he looks as good as ever. Kyrie's making shots from all over the floor. It has been an absolute circus for since the moment KD and Kyrie got there, and obviously Kyrie missing a significant amount of time last season for well-documented reasons was problematic. It was a point this offseason where it looked like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, maybe both would not be in Brooklyn. That's among the reasons, if not entirely the reason, the Nets weren't invited to play on Christmas Day. Nobody thought Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving would be on the team at that point, but they seem to be on the same page now, and they are rocking and rolling. 9-game winning streak, and they look like a real factor in the East. Obviously, Boston at the top of that, Milwaukee with Giannis also among the favorites. But if you were counting out the Brooklyn Nets, you need to reconsider, because Kevin and Kyrie are operating at a high level, and you get into a 7-game series with them, they can beat you.
So what do you make of the rivalry, Gary? Is there real bad blood here?
Yes. These guys don't like each other. And I understand why. You know, they both said some pretty bad public things about each other. It's gotten personal in certain spots. But I do think they respect each other. Like, I think the Grizzlies respect, and that's from Ja Morant all the way down, what the Warriors have been able to accomplish. I think Ja Morant respects who Steph Curry is as a player and a man. And I think the Warriors respect the Grizzlies. Wish they'd shut up a little bit. Like, stop chirping until, you know, you've won something. Klay Thompson said this the other night. They were talking like they were a dynasty and they haven't won anything yet. And that's a totally fair assessment. But Klay Thompson also said we take them seriously because we know they're a threat. And they are a threat. You know, the Grizzlies win completely healthy, despite what we saw on Christmas. And that's one of the best teams in the NBA, and all of their best players are in their early 20s. I don't know that this organization will ever accomplish what these Golden State Warriors have accomplished, but they're set up, and if they're going to get there, at some point they're probably going to run into the Warriors again. And there's a reason why the NBA put those guys against each other on prime time on Christmas Day. It's because they've got stars on both sides, and there's a genuine dislike, also respect, but dislike among the two teams.
Time to shine on some football on a Tuesday. Jets fans can let out a sigh of relief. Mike White is back as the starting quarterback. What a mess New York has with number 2 overall pick, Zach Wilson.
Yeah, like he says, there's still a future for Zach in New York. I'm just not sure of that. You know, I don't know if you've seen the direct message with his mother saying the place is too toxic for anybody to succeed. You know, that gets out, and that's just another little headline connected to this disaster of a situation. I don't know if Zach Wilson can be a good NFL quarterback someday, but I'm pretty skeptical that it's going to happen with the Jets. Either way, you're right. Good news for Jets fans, because Mike White, you know, he's not Patrick Mahomes, but he has been the best quarterback for the Jets this season. And there's a whole bunch of Mike Whites in my world right now. You got Mike White, quarterback of the Jets, Mike White, head basketball coach at Georgia, and then Mike White, creator of the White Lotus. So that's a lot of Mike Whites floating around. But the Jets are in a good position to get him healthy again. He's missed the past 2 games with a rib injury, but like I said, he's been the best quarterback that they've had this season and gives them the best opportunity to win right now.
I mean, they're still in the playoff mix.
Yes.
That's the thing about it. So they need Mike White to look like Joe Montana, like he did in that one game about a month ago. 3 weeks ago, it looked improbable, but after 3 straight wins, the Packers have a realistic shot of making the postseason. Do you think they actually get this done, GP?
Yeah, I think they can get it done. You know, they got to win out, and Washington has to lose 1 of 2, but I think both of those things are, if not the likely outcomes of these next couple of weeks, certainly realistic outcomes. You know, the final 2 games for the Packers are at home against the Vikings and the Lions. They're going to be favored in both of those. So if you're a Green Bay fan, root for the home team, but also against Washington. I won't be surprised at all if we're seeing Aaron Rodgers in the NFC playoffs again.
It's unbelievable. Staying in the NFC, Dak Prescott played his best game of the season in a win over the Eagles. What does a game like this do for Dak's confidence heading into the postseason?
Well, it's got to be huge because you don't just go out and have a big game to get a win on a big stage, but you do it against a rival and against one of the best teams in the NFL. The downside, he got sacked 6 times in the game. Got to figure that out. But Dallas was down by 10 twice, rallied each time to improve to 11-4, and you see the numbers there. Dak was incredibly productive, efficient, and operating like the franchise quarterback he is supposed to be. He hasn't always been that. Injuries have obviously been a part of his story, but ask any football coach, you want your key players playing well at this part of the year, and that's happening right now in Dallas.
He threw an early pick 6 and then was just awesome after that. The Vikings' magical season continued this weekend as Kirk Cousins engineered a game-winning drive that ended in a Greg Joseph 61-yard walk-off field goal to beat the Giants. What do you make of all these close wins from Minnesota this year, Gary?
Well, I can tell you what people who really follow analytics would tell you is that what that suggests is they're not as good as their 12-3 record, that there is a luck factor in close games, and that seems to be shifting all the way to the positive for Minnesota in this season. But good luck telling that to a Vikings fan. Nobody wants to hear it. I think they'll trade the word lucky in for clutch and big performances when it matters. And so, Minnesota is still in play to have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and that would obviously be massive considering the Vikings are 8-1 at home. So it's been a magical season to date. We'll see if they can keep it going.
8 game-winning drives, phenomenal. Gary, did Patrick Mahomes all but lock up the NFL MVP with his 3-touchdown performance against the Seahawks this weekend?
I don't know if he locked it up because a lot of different things can happen as we approach the end of this season, but just frankly speaking, Patrick Mahomes is the most valuable player in the NFL because he's the best player in the NFL, and he's the most important quarterback in the NFL. We get into these conversations all the time where people try to throw out alternative answers to the question, who's the best quarterback in the NFL. It is always that guy. It has been that way for a while. It's still that way today, and I know you, as a Kansas native, I can't get enough of Patrick Mahomes on Sunday afternoons.
I mean, best touchdown all season. He runs it in there, throws his wrist down. Hadn't even planned, obviously. He had to keep his balance and then just barely touch the pylon.
No.
That was his, they talk about a Heisman moment. Yeah. That was his MVP moment.
Yeah, no, he's outrageous and, if not the best quarterback of all time, certainly setting him up for an opportunity to be in that conversation.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell for more videos.